Kill me! I'm here! Kill me!
Hey everybody, this is Matthew Movies coming at you with my list of the top 10 worst Marvel movies of all time. Now, before I get into my ranking, I just want to make it abundantly clear that there are some movies that were not up for consideration, and those being like the B-level movies. So you're not going to find like the direct-to-DVD or video or whatever you want to call it these days, Man-Thing, or like the Captain America, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Nick Fury movies that were direct-to-video, or the Fantastic Four movie that Roger Corman made that was just made in order to keep the trademark at Fox. None of those are going to be listed here. I'm only looking at like the major releases. Other than that, though, it is fair for any of the movies that have been made that were based on Marvel characters. So you're not just talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the X-Men or any of those. All of those could potentially find their way here. And if you're looking for a more positive list on Marvel movies, if you look in my video history, last week I put out my top 10 favorite Marvel movies. So starting out the number list at number 10 is Howard the Duck. Now, I'm sure there are some people who'll be shocked that this movie's only at number 10, considering how terrible it really is and how ridiculous this movie is. But it is so ridiculous and so terrible, but it becomes enjoyable on a certain level, which made it so that I ended up making it a little bit higher on this list than it would have been otherwise, because there is something about it that is just charming enough that I had to keep it fairly high on the list, but it's also terrible enough that I had to include it. I mean, the duck boobs alone were just amazing. Coming in at number 9 is X-Men: The Last Stand. Now, real quick, I'm going to give a spoiler for this film that happens about the midway part. So, just if you're worried about that, skip ahead about 25 seconds or so. The reason why X-Men: The Last Stand is only at number 9 and not higher on the list is because there are great parts in this movie, including one of my all-time favorite moments from any of the X-Men movies, where after Charles Xavier has died, the character of Pyro is celebrating his death, and Magneto gets angry at him and explains to him that Charles did more for mutant kind than any other mutant or any other person, and that his life should be celebrated. It was a perfect character moment and completely encapsulated the relationship between Xavier and Magneto, so I love that moment. On the other hand, there is so much of this movie to hate. I mean, they kill off characters and depower characters left and right for no apparent reason other than just to do it. The big fight sequence at the end, there's like 20 mutants that will all have one power, 20 mutants that will all have the other. There's like this big mutant army, and they didn't give them any of the interesting powers that you see from the comics, or they didn't have any characters that comic fans would have liked. They were just all nondescript characters that could do the same things. The entire direction was awful. The way Juggernaut, when he had that "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch" line, like, come on, that was just ridiculous. Why are you referencing a viral video? This is a major movie, like none of the characters that are introduced are used in any kind of interesting fashion. It's just a movie that you walk out of feeling completely unsatisfied. And the another X-Men movie is coming in at number 8, and that is X-Men Origins Wolverine. This movie is really, really bad in my opinion. It amazes me that this is a movie that came out so much later in the X-Men franchise, but Wolverine's claws look like animated cartoon like things that are attached to his hand. The first X-Men movie did the claws so much better. There's so many parts of it that are god awful. What they do to Deadpool at the end of it is just ridiculous. And like even down to like details, like they introduced a character that his whole ability is basically he's like a mutant marksman, but yet they have him when he's trying to take out Wolverine. He's the one flying a helicopter while a nondescript soldier is the one shooting at him, and that makes absolutely no sense. All of a sudden, Ma and Pa Kent show up. The guy who plays Gambit, his accent comes and goes at every other second. It's ridiculous that they set it up with Wolverine and Sabretooth throughout the entire movie, going at each other's like trying to kill one another. Then at the end, they're like, we're best buds again. Like there's just so many things in this movie that are just awful. The cartoonish effect that they used to try to de-age Xavier, like just it's just such a bad movie. Coming in number seven is Daredevil. Now, there are a few elements of this movie, again, that I do enjoy. Just like there were with X-Men Origins Wolverine, the one thing I loved about that movie was the early relationship with Sabretooth and Wolverine, and that opening credits where it's them throughout history. And with Daredevil, just like with the other movies, there are parts of it that I enjoy, which is why it's on the list, but not near the top. Like, I still think that Michael Clarke Duncan was an amazing Kingpin. I mean, Vincent D'Onofrio has played the character now and he kicked it out of the park, or hit it out of the park, I should say. But I thought Michael Clarke Duncan was a great Daredevil. I know a lot of people hate Colin Farrell as Bullseye, but I enjoyed him in a very over the top kind of fashion. But there's so much of this movie is bad. Like that moment where it's Elektra and Daredevil on the teeter-totter is just awful. Some of the effects are really bad. The story is, it's amazing that they pulled so much of it out of the comics, but it just still felt so like cloying and just awful. It's just not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination in my view. Coming at number 6 for me is Iron Man 3. When I saw this movie in the theater, I was loving it up until a certain point, and then I was just so irritated, and I'm actually going to do a rant on Iron Man 3 in the future. One of the major parts of this movie that just drives me nuts, so I'm not going to touch on it, but there's other parts of it too that just so irritating. Like the whole Mandarin twist just drives me absolutely nuts. I know some people seem to like it because they didn't see it coming and they thought it was funny, but I don't go to see Iron Man 3 for it to be funny. Like, that's just ridiculous. I hated that twist. I know that there's people that find the whole character of the Mandarin to be an offensive one, and I understand that. I understand why they would have a distaste for it, but if you're going to put him in the movie, just go with it. And the ending I thought was very underwhelming. The fact that Iron Man pretty much isn't in this movie, that Tony Stark's in it a bunch, but Iron Man's never in the movie. The kid actor was super annoying. Gwyneth Paltrow I've never been a fan of, and she's really irritating in this movie to me. Just across the board, there really isn't much of anything in that movie that I actually thought was good. Keeping the train going, number 5 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought this movie was atrocious. I went and saw it in the theater, and I walked out of it just like shaking my head. I didn't love The Amazing Spider-Man 1, but I thought there was parts of it that were good. Like, I thought that Andrew Garfield was a good Spider-Man. I hated him as Parker, but I thought he was a good Spider-Man. He had the wit under control. But this movie to me completely lost me. Electro was awful. He was such a cartoony nerd in the beginning, and then when he became Electro, the reasons why he hated Spider-Man were really like, oh, he lied to me. He didn't really. That made no sense. The fact that when they have their fight in Times Square, that they have his internal monologue in the music because apparently they didn't have enough confidence in Jamie Foxx's performance, just drove me nuts. I thought that the new Goblin looked awful. It just looked like gross and terrible. Across the board, I think this movie just sucks on every level. Like, even and one of the major parts that worked in the first movie was the romance, and then in this movie I thought they completely effed it up. Like, at the end of the last movie, he's like, I can't be with you, Gwen, because or in the beginning of this movie I should say, I can't be with you, Gwen, because your dad wanted me to stay away from you because it was dangerous for you, but yet he stays friends with her. Well, how does that help anything? Their dad wasn't like, I don't want you making out with her. He's like, I don't want you around her. But if he's still going to be around her, there was no reason for him to break up with her. It's ridiculous. And the whole idea that she's like, oh, I have to leave because I got the ability to go to a school in England or wherever it was, but I have to leave tomorrow. Yeah, that's how life works. When people get into a school, they leave the next day. They don't have a period of time to arrange their lives around it or whatever. That's a thing that happens a lot, right? Just across the board, the movie I thought was really poorly executed. The whole thing with the train station was goofy. The idea that nobody would have ever gotten there before him was really just across the board, I thought it was a very, very bad movie. Coming in at number 4 is Spider-Man 3, keeping the Spider-Man train going. I did a rant about this movie before, so I'm not gonna go on and on about it too much, but suffice it to say, it's just a bad movie. There's only a couple things that are even remotely decent. Like the portrayals of Venom is ridiculous. He comes off like a whiny kid. The Spider-Man, emo Spider-Man is just god awful. I mean, that dance sequence is really, really bad. And like when he like has his dyed hair like off to the side to show how emo he is just awful. The writing of the characters make no sense. The way that him and Harry are suddenly best friends again is just not earned in any way that makes even like a lick of sense. Mary Jane breaking up with him for fear of Harry, even though she doesn't know he has powers, and she does know that her boyfriend is Spider-Man, makes absolutely no sense. It's just a poorly written, poorly executed film. Coming at number 3 for me is Punisher Warzone. I couldn't stand this movie. I know a lot of people are big fans of the movie because it does have that R rating, and it is as grisly as a Punisher movie should be, but I also felt like they didn't get any of the characters. Like Jigsaw's portrayal in the movie is cartoonish and goofy. The Punisher, even though they were willing to have him be, really deadly, they didn't really understand the character because he's a guy who like doesn't have any flex to him, yet he's okay with people who commit crimes that he apparently thinks he's okay. Well, that's just not the character. The acting was wooden. Julie Benz, she's not an actress that I like in any way whatsoever. I think she's just really, really awful. And just the whole movie to me was really, really bad. Coming in at number 2 is Fantastic Four, the most recent one, otherwise known as Fan4stick. Just a god awful movie. I couldn't stand this movie. I remember watching it, and it's funny because right at the beginning it seemed like there was some potential to it. Like they were setting up the characters when they were showing them as kids. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I mean, it's not the Fantastic Four that I grew up reading or that I know, but it's an interesting new take on them. I'll go along for the ride, see where this thing takes me. And across the board, it was just bad from that point on. I mean, there's so many things about it that are awful. You have the big fight at the end, and Doctor Doom, again, they give him powers, which is irritating to me because Doctor Doom doesn't have powers, but whatever. Not everybody's a comic nerd, but literally his only move in fight is throwing dirt at people. He throws dirt at all 4 of the Fantastic Four, which is really irritating. There's all kinds of stuff that is completely nonsensical, like when it's amazing to me, like the best part of an origin movie isn't the origin, it's the scene where they show the characters figuring out their powers. Everybody, most of the time, we all have some knowledge of a character's origin, so we don't want to sit through them like going through the entire process, but it's entertaining to see them testing out their new powers. And then this movie, when the time comes for them to try to figure out their powers, the thing comes up where it's like 1 year later, and they skip by the most interesting part of any of these origin story movies. The acting is really bad. There's moments where you can so blatantly tell that they did a reshoot because like Kate Mara's hair looks completely different and then switches back. Like, this is a major production. That type of thing should not be happening. The story, like the way they get their powers is altered in a way that doesn't make any sense. It's just a bad movie. And then my number 1 worst Marvel movie of all time is Elektra. I think this movie is brutal. There isn't any moment in it that is remotely entertaining. I didn't like Elektra and Daredevil because I thought Jennifer Garner gave a completely lifeless portrayal of the character that should be very passionate and entertaining, and instead we get this really drab, downtrodden, quiet character that just is awful. And then they bring her back in this movie, and she's fighting all these bad guys that have no personality. The stakes are I don't care. She's got some kid that's around for no apparent reason. They throw in a scene with Daredevil just to try to link it to the. I think that might even be a deleted scene, and that there was zero chemistry there, which is amazing considering they ended up getting married and having kids. I mean, it's just across the board, it's bad. I have no interest. Like when I watch it, I have no interest in the story, no interest in any of the characters, and there's just nothing about it to me that is even remotely redeeming. So that's my list of the top 10 worst Marvel movies of all time. Let me know what you think. If you're a big fan of any of the movies I mentioned, like I know Harry Thomas, one of the guys who I check out his channel, he checks out mine, is a big fan of Spider-Man 3, and we've had that discussion before. But if anybody else is a big fan of Spider-Man 3, hit me up. Hit me up on any of these movies if you think I'm completely off the mark, or if you think there's movies that should have been on here that weren't. Then let me know what your top 10 worst Marvel movies are, all in the comments below. That'd be awesome. Hit that like button. It gets my channel in front of people that otherwise wouldn't have found it. And please, if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. It does awesome things for me. And if you go one step further and hit the notification buttons, I would absolutely love it. Other than that, have yourself a nice day.